It's again like if I see like videos of him like talking about the old days, I love listening to that. When it comes to his opinion on the modern product, though, not so much, and it gets a little difficult to listen to him because he gets a little well, let's say the term "it was a different time then" applies to him quite a bit with some of the things he said.
So one of my new favorite stuff is seeing people squirm at their stuff that was a different time stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the videos that you forced me to make on Vampire the Masquerade, and I cringe.
I'm sorry,
every
what?
time I watch them.
What am I being accused of?
You contractually blackmailed me into doing an entire series.
Oh, that's right. I did
Embrace.
contractually blackmail you. For once, what you're saying is correct.
Wow. I was ready to think it was just another.
No, I forgot. He had me record a whole voice section for him.
Splice was like, if you go look at, I used to do a show that was very shortly run called Limited Series. And most of them are still up. And the whole concept is I would only do series that ran for one season or less. And so the actual I never got to that one.
What?
But the actual
No, he got things that were far less successful than the Cape.
Yeah, it was one of these things where like I didn't get very far into my YouTubing career before I realized how much I hated dealing with it, and it kind of just went away. But the series, which I did in its entirety, was a series called Kindred the Embraced. And if you're not familiar with it, it was based on the Vampire the Masquerade tabletop role-playing game. And I'm not joking.
Yeah, the one I remember that like it left an impression on me was the Munsters pilot that you reviewed.
Mockingbird Lane with Jerry O'Connell as Herman Munster.
And Eddie Izzard is Grandpa Herman.
Yeah,
or Grandpa Munster. Yeah.
And Portia de Rossi as Lily Munster. And it was like it was something.
They decisions were made.
Decisions were made. I mean, it could have been good, but I understand why it didn't get the green light.
Well, yeah, because they're trying to do like a more serious Munsters.
So was it just a pilot then, or
yeah,
it was a pilot that they showed on NBC. Because you know how sometimes they'll do the pilots and like they'll turn it into like a Halloween special. So they turned it into a Halloween special. I still have the video somewhere on my hard drive. And if you wanted like to basically just save yourself like the hour, just watch my 20-minute video of it. My video's still up somewhere. But it was like
you say that they're trying to do a more serious the Munsters. They did a more serious Fresh Prince, so
yeah, well.
I don't know what to believe anymore.
This was before streaming services would just greenlight everything.
Wait, a more serious Fresh Prince? What are you talking about?
Oh, you haven't heard from Bel Air?
You don't want to. You don't want to know.
Like, I haven't watched it, but I looked at that and I kind of looked at that and I went, ooh, this is giving me Cowboy Bebop on Netflix vibes. And for those of you who have heard my summation of Cowboy Bebop on Netflix, you know that's not a great comparison there.
No,
it is not.
And if you haven't seen Cowboy Bebop on Netflix, don't. Like seriously, if sometimes Splice just wants to have like the stream, Chris will spoil, Kami will spoil Cowboy Bebop on Netflix, so you don't have to watch it. He will save you that time. He's already taken that bullet for you. Just don't do it.
Cowboy Bebop at his computer.
Yeah, just sit there. It's like, here, basically, this is what happened, and this is where it just went off the rails. And don't watch it because it's horrible, and we need to all feel sorry for John Cho. Yeah, that's it. But anyway, to get back to it, when I started the series, which was Kindred the Embraced, which was Aaron Spelling adapting a tabletop role playing game to,
which is just a weird sentence to say,
right? Technically, this is in same continuity with Beverly Hills 90210 and Melrose Place. So the guy that did this vampire vampire weekly drama based on a tabletop role play about clans of vampires.
Like
And
you
it didn't.
do.
And like it lasted 8 or 12 episodes. I think it was 12 because I reviewed every single episode because the actual genesis of it was I told my best friend who was a big fan of it. It's like, if you ever get that on DVD, I will make a YouTube video and I will review every episode. And for his anniversary, his wife got him like the 10 or 20 year anniversary for it, and the first thing he did was like, guess what I've got in my hand? And I was like, what? And then he sent me a picture of it, and I just went, you son of a bitch.
Promises were made.
Well, I guess I had to do that, and so I roped Splice into it. It's like, look, I need basically somebody to just, I need just basically some kind of hook here as to why I'm doing this, because up until that point I did XCOM Let's Plays very casually. And so I'm like, all right, Splice, you're my agent. You're forcing me to do this. Just figure out the lines. And so technically, Splice contractually blackmailed me into reviewing Kindred the Embrace.
I forgot that happened. This is unlocking memories.
Yeah, this sounds like a labor of love.
I mean, like, and like the first episode's so bad because it was my first actual foray into video editing, and it's just so awful to watch. But like, as you get through it, you can see I'm getting better with the editing, and by the end, very surprisingly, I did not give it an overall negative review. Like, it was stupid, and it was awful, and like, it was total camp, but like, compared to some of the stuff that was coming down the line, like, it was, you could pretty much say it was Twilight in some respects.
Splice, you need to find some of your earliest video editing and make it available as a Splice curiosity.
I mean, we still have obviously we have Splice Strategy still there, and for the 1000th stream we did the watch of it. But the really early stuff is still somewhere on the Why Smash League YouTube page. Wonder if I still have access to that.
I don't think you ever gave it to anyone else.
I gave other people.
Guys, am I clipping?
No, I can hear you just fine.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
You sound
okay.
you're not clipping. You sound a little bit far away from your microphone.
Really? Because I'm looking at the input levels and it seems like it's going way too high. But
I'm not talking about volume. I'm talking about echo. It sounds like you're far away from your mic.
Does it currently sound like I'm far away from my mic?
Less so.
That's just which monitor I'm facing when I'm talking.
I think it's fine.
Somebody just came in. Sorry, I'm in another window, so I don't know who.
It's Lizzie.
Did she finish her Tetris 99 match?
I finished. I'm here.
Did you conquer?
Well, I was doing the marathon mode, 999 lines, but I did win.
And a Tetris ain't one?
Yeah.
It's important to stretch. All right, let's get started. So, the line between what is a remake, a remaster, a re-release, and a port, all these things, they are very unclear. All I know was that when Metroid Prime Remastered got announced, I was very excited because that game was just, that's my childhood right there. And when I saw this first cinematic and saw how much clearer Talon 4 looked, I was in awe and said to myself, this is what I want in a remaster. I just want it to be the same experience, but slightly improved in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. Then this is episode 20 of I Think We Overleveled. This episode is 100% because me and Baggins got talking about this the last night because he's been playing through Link's Awakening remaster. Or what's the actual subtitle?
It's just Link's Awakening on Switch.
Okay, that's what it is. And he was just saying how much he liked the decisions they made for it.
Indeed.
Because it preserved jank.
I actually just played it. I beat it this morning, and it's not even necessarily the jank, although that there's a conversation to be had around that. That's not, but I just feel like one of the things that was really cool is they preserved even the art style, even though it's a completely different medium. The characters look like 3D renditions of the exact cartoonish characters
in the original Game Boy release.
Yes, and that is a decision that you don't see often, and it's one that I'm very glad they made.
Yeah, because they want that toy aesthetic.
Well, it was almost like it's almost the origin of Toon Link in some ways.
I never really thought of the game like that, but I get, yeah, kind of. But I mean, because clearly back then it's because they're playing with the Game Boy's limitations.
Exactly. Back then it was out of necessity, and that's one of the cool things that I thought was really cool with this remake is, they polished it, they make it nice and HD, but it's just like it's still the same characters. Like there's a couple of cartoonish crocodiles, and they have the same design. They've just been up-resed and pulled into 3 dimensions.
Yeah, because that's, I mean, talking about a niche part of remastering just by itself, the concept of we are going to port, because essentially it's like, all right, you're taking it from one system to another, and anytime you're moving cross-system, every system has a different set of limitations and abilities, and like the Game Boy in particular has a lot of limitations. Like this, for one, the sound quality on the remake a lot better.
Well, and one of the things that I think is like, I think this topic is perfect for this show, just because, we're old gamers, and it's sort of a weird discussion of, so where do you find the balance? Because they want to make this game accessible to younger kids who are just coming in. They're used to these higher res graphics and better music, but there is a built-in audience of the people who played Link's Awakening on the Game Boy, and then there's even another built-in audience of the people who grew up wanting to play Link's Awakening but not having a Game Boy. And what they did with this one was they're just like, and this is something I feel like some of my favorite remakes have done, is they make the game in order to replicate the experience you had playing it, not the game itself.
What do you mean? I don't think I quite get that.
So, for example, when I played the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters,
okay,
the thing that I thought was really cool is as I was playing it, I was like, this does not look like the game did when I originally played it. But it does look like I remember the game looking when I originally played it.
What was different?
I mean, like they'd updated a lot of the visuals and the sound and everything, but because I was a kid and because of the limitations that I had been used to when it came to, playing video games, there was a lot of my imagination that actually went into what I remember.
Gotcha.
And what they were able to do is they were able to take that experience of how I remember it and replicate that. And that, I think, is an even more impressive feat.
All right.
Because they do have re-releases of games where it's just like they'll take it and they'll port it.
Yeah.
Like that's what Nintendo Switch Online is all about, is you have, you can play the NES, you can play and they're basically emulated versions of the game.
Those are basically like old school ROMs, except for the multiplayer, they do some work.
Yeah, they will do some work on a few aspects, and that's really cool. But this kind of remake is something else, where it's just like, okay, and it's really, really a knife's edge that you have to balance, because if you change too much, you end up Star Wars Special Editioning it, where people are annoyed and they're just like, this isn't what I remember. But if you're able to find that balance, because the people who, at least for me, when I find a game that I loved from the past and they re-release it, I feel like, okay, I want to share this game with other people now. And I want to be able to share what I remember with other people. And so if they're able to replicate the experience while still making it so that people aren't going to just be like, ooh, that's kind of, crummy, then I feel like that's a true success.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because this gets into a discussion of if they're going to remaster something, what do you want? Because sometimes I want changes.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the key is if you're going to re-release a game or remaster it to do it, I think the first question that you ask is why? Why are we re-releasing this?
And hope the answer isn't because we want more money.
And if it's a cash grab,
ultimately that is going to be the answer.
Yeah,
to some degree.
Always the answer.
That's always a answer. It can't be the answer.
If it's just a cash grab, the audience can tell. The audience can always tell.
Well, I mean, since profit's always going to be a motive, and this is something I've said about reboots or just resurrecting an old franchise to make a new entry. I feel like the most important thing is that you have to have people that don't just respect the original, they have to love it as well. And if you don't, it comes out in the final product in a very bad way.
So here's the thing. When it comes to a remake or a remaster or anything like that, I feel like the question of why you make it, it shouldn't be money. That's how you get the financial people to buy in on it. But the reason for re-releasing it shouldn't just be we want more money. And I think that because I think that intent kind of stays with the program from the beginning. So like if it's somebody like, okay, this was really cool and I want to bring it back. There's a lot of stuff that we couldn't do before that we can add in. I want to do that. That's one thing. But again, if it's just, we need money, let's re-release this game for the 7th time. Well,
Elder Scrolls.
No.
Skyrim.
Yeah, I'm not going to contradict you on that one.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, they made Skyrim.
I think the main thing you say there that I've noticed lately, it's you want to add on to something, not change it. Because if you have some cool things you want to add versus, we need to change it for whatever reason, I think that adding to something that's already good is way more important than changing it to fit some other new criteria.
Well, especially because the love that people have for it, when you change it, it's just like, well, this isn't the thing that I loved. Why would I be excited for this?
Yeah, I mean, that does seem like a very legit, because like, as technology has moved forward, as program has moved forward, hey, here's this game that was pretty good back then, but we can add in this graphical engine, and so that this is rendered a little bit better. We can put in this mode that maybe nobody had thought of before, and maybe that adds some gameplay. Randomizers to old games to try and breathe new life into them is another great example. Like, re-releasing a game just for the sake of just saying, it's like, oh, here's this game, but over here, it's just like, okay.
Well, it also comes to what Jordan mentioned about our conversation the other night. Sometimes a remake or a remaster will remove a glitch, and it kind of takes away from the game, because in these old school games, especially on the 8-bit and 16-bit era, what they would do is they'd make a game, they'd polish it as much as they could, and then they'd put it out into the wild, and then it's out there. It's done. It's what it is. And then, if they discover a glitch, there is no patching it out. And over time, these glitches become part of the identity of the game.
Yeah.
And so if they come in and they do a remaster or a remake and they remove that glitch, something feels like it's been lost.
Well, and so a great example of this is...
Well, like, aren't there some versions of Final Fantasy VI that you can't suplex the train? And that's a rotten shame.
That's just stupid.
There's some versions of Final Fantasy VI where you do not get the glitch, which will give you 99 economizers.
Mm-hmm.
Which sucked because that was the only way I won that game. Was because everyone had an economizer. Oh, let me just cast Ultima. Let me just spam Ultima because it just cost me 1 magic point.
The economizer and the what's the thing that lets you cast it twice?
Oh, yeah,
gem box.
The gem box.
Yeah, that's right.
No, but like for an example, so this isn't a remake; it's actually a sequel, but in many ways it's kind of a remaster. TF2 is in many ways a remastering of Team Fortress Classic and just reimagining it. But what the biggest thing that they did is they codified a lot of the things that the community had sort of stumbled into. Rocket jumping was never an intended mechanic, but people got so good at it, it became kind of required for you to be able to do anything in a competitive match. So instead of trying to quote unquote fix it, they codified it and said, this is going to be now completely part of this game. It's important. Roll with it.
On a similar note with Metroid Dread.
Well, I just want to say really quick, TF2 is a very, very different game than TF Classic.
It is, but it's
very much a sequel. It's very much a sequel.
But what I mean is, like, it's in that vein of what they were trying to do wasn't we're going to bury this old thing. It was let's take what the old thing did and actually add to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But like I was saying, that with Metroid Dread, Super Metroid is one of the original speedrun games because there's so many different ways to sequence break in it. And one of the smart decisions that they made when they made Metroid Dread was they realized there is a whole community out there that does this. This is why they play. And they kind of built that into Metroid Dread. Because they're just like, what do people love about Metroid? It's not just the story. It's not just, finding stuff. There are all sorts of different ways that people enjoy the game. And so they built in certain things. Like, it's not quite the same when it's intentionally put in there, but at the same time, it was put in out of care for a group of people rather than they realized, this isn't a bug, it's a feature.
Yeah, well, and to your point, like one small thing that they did, and it's ironic because it's now trivialized. They made it so that there's multiple ways to defeat Kraid that utilize things that you should not be able to have at the time. And so you can trigger little cinematic attacks. And so they're like, we're going to reward people for sequence breaking. The problem is, in sequence breaking, people almost always skip Kraid entirely. Right. So this great feature they put in ends up just like, nah, unfortunately, it's not what's going to be happening.
That kind of adds to the charm and the lore of the game.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is even if they try to do this, there are the bugs and, the ghosts in the machine that come in and create a whole new identity. You give a game, a fully completed game, and to a group of gamers, they are going to find a way to play it wrong and love it.
Well, it reminds me of like RPGs where they have, say like a character dies, and then after that character's dead, another character shows up and joins the party. And yet, when they dig through the files, they find, there's dialogue between these two characters that never meet in the actual game. And the fact that exists, it's it does kind of add to the developer lore,
Yeah. Well, and that leads into what's one of the more highly rated remakes / remasters, and that's the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, where they bundled all three.
It's still on sale right now.
Is it? Oh, okay. But it bundles all three games together. And so they they sort of remaster the first game and change up the gameplay. Now, I haven't played it, so I can't speak to the specifics of it, but something to try and make it so that the gameplay from 1 to 2 isn't such a huge jump in terms of...
It's not perfect, but they did a decent job.
Yeah, but I just remember in Mass Effect 2 specifically, if you got Legion and if you hacked the game to get him early, there were characters who would react to him and just be like, what's up? What's going on here?
Which, by the way, as of the time of recording, it is in the summer sale for $5.99, a whopping 90% off.
Wait, the Legendary Edition?
Yep, I'm looking at it right now. It's $5.99 until tomorrow.
Wow. And I'm just thinking Lizzie was gonna play Mass Effect 1, but she couldn't handle seeing the graphical change of 3 going back to 1.
It's a bit of a jump.
There's a bit of a jump, but I mean, like that is an example of a good remaster or a decent one. I mean, I can remember one of the most panned remasters, or of at least in the last, I guess, the last 5 years. Because does anyone remember when what happened when Warcraft 3 Reforged?
We were at BlizzCon that year.
Wait, was that the infamous BlizzCon?
Yes,
we were at that.
You guys have cell phones?
Yes, that's the cell phone. That BlizzCon is incredible.
And that's the one you went to in person, right?
Yep.
Oh,
I to this day, I feel like I was at the height of Blizzard's power and the nadir of their power, because I went in 2016, like Overwatch is flying high, everything's going great with WoW.
Weird Al's the concert.
Yeah, Weird Al's the concert. Like, it was just like everyone was feeling great, and then go 2 years later and no one's feeling good about anything.
It was really weird because I went to that BlizzCon super hyped, and I left that BlizzCon and was like, I don't think I need to play any more Blizzard games. It wasn't like it wasn't.
It was soul crushing.
It wasn't for any specific reason. I was just de-hyped. Like, I wasn't angry. I was just bored.
It did the opposite of what it was supposed to do.
Anti-hype.
Like anti. What is anti-hype? I'm gonna look that up.
It's anti-hype.
I believe it's under BlizzCon 2019 or 2018.
2018. But no, it's
but do you like? I remember playing Warcraft 3 with my little brother because he loved it, and it was, again, there's so much of an age gap between me and my little brother. Like, there were a few things that that we could actually like relate on, because like he was 6 and I was almost 20, so big age gap there, but so I had fond memories of it, not as much as he did, but like, it came out and there were glitches, and didn't they replace like the original version of the game so you couldn't even play your old version? It would automatically update you to the new version and then lock you out of any like player content that you had downloaded. Yep. And there were errors everywhere, and it was just like it was awful.
Everything that they could have done wrong, they did.
Well, it's like
is this the Warcraft 3 Reforged you're still talking about?
Yes, still talking.
Yeah. Well, like, you think about what I was saying just a bit ago, where it's like I want to, recreate the experience I had when I played the original, and in this, they're just like, no, you don't even get to play the original anymore. We're taking that away too, and it's just
but the thing, because what it was they were putting it in thinking, okay, we want to make it so that it's this unified experience that anyone can enjoy, and we don't want to force people to have to pay for this game to keep playing Warcraft 3 because we're going to ravage, the player base of it by doing so. And so we're going to make it the same.
It was definitely unifying.
Yes, yeah, they succeeded.
They succeeded in the wrong way.
Yeah.
But that brings me to another question, and I'm blanking on it, so I'm hoping that one of you people here know. I seem to remember there was some game that was remade in the last few years that came out, and they were putting things that previously, if you had the original version, you could play behind a paywall. And I can't remember what it was, but I remember it was like pretty like all over the place.
Doesn't ring a bell for me.
I want to say it was an Ubisoft game.
I mean,
because that sounds like an Ubisoft thing to do.
Yeah,
right?
like in terms of how could we mess this up? Blizzard and Ubisoft and Sony are high competitors nowadays.
But I mean, like, that's another thing, which I'm sure has happened on other games. But like, you could make a case that every Madden game is just a remake of the first one, just currentized, and they keep paywalling that off for features that you previously had. Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, that's basically the evolution of sports games, giving you less for more, or giving you less for the more you
or
pay.
giving you way less.
Giving you way less. Like, I'm so glad I didn't get on the sports game train.
Yeah, it's frankly kind of a little abusive.
It is, but I mean, but what that also leads you into, which kind of sidetracks, like, fighting games is another group that has that's rife with remakes. Like, how many remakes of Street Fighter 2 are there out there?
How many, not just remakes, versions, and like, because like there's Street Fighter 2, but there's also like Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which introduces new characters. There's Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, which lets you play as the bosses. There's
Well, so that's the thing that's interesting, because a lot of times what those different versions were in reality, even though they're all slightly different, they were them porting the game to a new system it hadn't been on before. And each time they're like, okay, we got to do something so that someone who owns it on this other system has a reason to buy it on this system. Or at least,
More characters out, and we'll call it Super Street Fighter.
Well, I mean, I feel like there was at least 10 versions just on the Super Nintendo alone, so it's not always a new system.
I'm not saying always, but a lot of them were that. But more importantly,
that's why I remember when Street Fighter 3 finally came out, I'm just like, whoa. They changed the number.
Yeah, it's they were the original Valve in that we didn't think they'd be able to count to 3.
Yeah.
No, but so actually it's funny you should bring that up, because very recently there was an example of this very thing you're talking about that led to some very interesting discussions with the Marvel what's it called? The Capcom Fighter.
Capcom Marvel.
Yeah, well, but the game, because it's a whole collection. Is it just Marvel?
Collection thing.
Yeah, the Marvel collection.
Yeah, and so, which was a game a lot of people never thought would come. But you watch people like, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on his name. Maximilian Dude, who is like, he will up and down swear that the best tournament fighter ever is Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And they thought due to licensing complications, they would never get it again. So when it got announced, he was absolutely freaking out because there was no word of it or anything. But then they got to a very interesting discussion of which version of the game is this? Because there's the arcade version, there's the ports they did to the Dreamcast versus the ports they did to this thing, and then one of them actually got patched with something a lot of them didn't like, and so they were very curious what version of the game they're getting. So they're going over all the frame data with a fine-tooth comb, trying to figure out what they're doing.
I'm curious. I'm like, is it going to have the Japanese comedian in it in this version?
Yeah.
Which one are we talking about?
Because, the first time I played that game, it had the Japanese comedian in it that my friend would play as. And I don't think that's in the official US version, but it was in the version we played.
Yeah, so there was a comedian that was a character in one of the games.
It was Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
But no, so they're going over it with a fine-tooth comb, just wondering, which version of the game are we getting? And so far, they've been very outwardly pleased with a lot of the decisions that have been made. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know it's one of those things, like, he's talking about things that are well beyond my understanding of that game, because that game, as far as technical fighters go, is one of the most technical. But it gets this whole idea of what did they want, and this is where clearly, and this is a weird sentence to say, Capcom was listening. What they wanted, they didn't want remastering. What they wanted was their game that they liked to work on modern, screens.
Yep.
And
as one of those people, I can verify that.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things, and it's going to be different with each game. Like for me, if I haven't bought it yet, although I might be now that I heard the price.
What's the price? I haven't heard the price.
I'm talking about the Mass Effect game. But like my question would have been, it's like, well, what are you doing with it? Because I would want some changes to Mass Effect 1, because Mass Effect 1 was clunky. One small one is the loading times. The loading times were a bit ridiculous. But that's a small thing. And it's a thing that, for the most part, people aren't going to freak out over.
Right.
But so it's like, we want some changes, and it's just, it's a hard line to say what types of changes people want. Because you could say, oh, well, where technology can improve it, you should definitely improve it. And it's like, sometimes I don't want that. One thing that Baggins and I were talking about with the Link's Awakening, being forced to be on the Game Boy introduces some jank that was part of the design. And sometimes if you remove that jank, it no longer feels like that game.
Mm-hmm. Like I've heard the example, I haven't played it, but like when people talk about Silent Hill 2, a lot of people say that when in the original game, since they had a limit of what the hardware can render, they had a very dense fog. And in the remake, they're like, oh, well, we don't have to have this limited draw distance, and we could render more. And people are like, well, without that jank, it's now not scary of a game.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, it's one of those things. They added the fog in the storyline to cover up the limitation of the technology. And the people remaking it clearly didn't understand that. And that's where the problem lies. When the people remaking it don't get what it is that they're actually remaking. So
it feels like if they were to re-release Elden Ring and put an easy mode.
Yeah.
And it's just like...
Yeah, I mean, it's not even my game, and I know that that's dumb.
Right. It's not mine either, but it's just sort of there is an identity to these games.
Yeah, it's
the hard part of
messing with the soul of the game.
Mm-hmm. It's like the people who sit there and say, hey, you should make a version of Baldur's Gate 3 that isn't turn-based. And it's like, no, that's the game. Sorry.
Well, now that you bring up Baldur's Gate, that actually is one I was thinking about.
Right.
Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, and along the lines, Planescape and, the other D&D base games where they got the enhanced edition. And I'm still, like, a little bit on the fence. So I know, especially in the case of Planescape Torment, the upscale resolution is a big difference because the original, like, they don't actually have to change the artwork to up-res it. It's just they can now render more on the screen at once. And then that, these kind of hand-drawn environments that were gorgeous to begin with, now you can see more of it on the screen, and it looks great just being able to run at a higher resolution.
Mm-hmm.
But in these versions, they did make some changes, like in the enhanced editions of Baldur's Gate and Planescape Torment, they added new characters. And since those games are very much, character driven of, an RPG party, D&D style party, that could potentially change the dynamics of all interactions. And I don't know whether it's a good thing or not. A lot of those games, I didn't play the original far enough or recent enough to really make a direct comparison or not.
Well, and the sad thing is it's probably one of those situations where you just sit there, it's like, what should we do? And the answer, because if anyone says, oh, you should always do X or Y, that's incorrect. You should never always do something. But at the same time, clearly players feel a way about one thing or another, and you have to figure out how they feel about it. And it just, you can't give a specific answer. because it's just one of those things. The only real answer is it depends, which is one of the least helpful answers you can give, but it's also true.
I can think of another game which I've never seen a really good remake or remaster of. Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah.
I've just the original came out and it was great and it was groundbreaking, and I feel like I've tried to get into like some of the remasters for different systems and they've always been bad. No matter what I've done.
Why do you say that?
Like, I remember like getting it for like some other system, and for some reason or another, just the resolution was awful.
That's not good.
I mean, like when I say the resolution was awful, like it was playing like postage stamp like size to get it, and I couldn't get it any bigger. Like, you know, I have an ultra wide monitor, but I couldn't even get it to like something normal. It was something that was very small and straining your eyes to see. And
that's odd, because that feels like something you should be able to handle.
Right? And, you know, I just never went back to it. And just in the years, like, I've just seen like, oh, well, this was buggy, this was that. And it just doesn't seem like anyone has bothered to, you know, put a fresh coat of paint on the old girl before you take her out. It's just, you know, I'd love to play it again. It's one of my favorite games of all time. But, I mean, am I wrong? Have you guys had a good experience with that game?
Sorry, I was distracted.
Knights of the Old Republic.
Oh, okay. I can't.
I played it once. I got a version on Steam, and I liked it, but I never played the original, so I can't speak to how good or bad the port was.
I haven't played the port. I played the original, and I absolutely loved it. And I also loved all the giant booklet that was, I want to say it was even like ring bound. But
yeah.
like all the stuff that came with the original, you know, version, I mean, you can't get that with the digital.
Nope.
So, I mean, just kind of the physical goodie experience you can't duplicate. I can't really speak to how good the remake is, but the original game's a classic.
I mean, absolutely. And I've never found a suitable remake. Now, granted, I haven't looked for one in the last 7 years. And the one I'm specifically talking about was probably 10 years ago. And I was like, oh, this will be great. I'll play it again. And just like, I couldn't. It was horrible.
What did they change?
Like, it wasn't even that they changed anything. It was that they didn't in any way modernize it. To be honest, because the original Knights of the Old Republic was on the OG Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you would think on a Windows system that they would have a way to do it. But, like, it's just like they didn't bother to update it. I couldn't get it to into a modern monitor size or modern monitor resolution. And it was just buggy, and it was slow on a... Well, I don't have, like... You know, well, at the time, and even now, I don't have, like, you know, the killer gamer setup. I have a pretty good one, you know? And it was just a bad, sluggish experience all around. It was like... It was literally like they just went, all right, let's put this in some new packaging, exactly how it was, and have fun with that. And... You know,
well, but that gets into the earlier conversation of what do you want from a remaster, and the one thing we absolutely must have is it can't be done just for the money.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be someone with passion behind the project, because if it's done only for money, it will show.
Well, like, I feel like one of the biggest reasons for a remake is games preservation, which is part of the reason why when they change too much, it actually becomes a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
I put a video, but one that kind of bugs me a lot is this this remake of Final Fantasy IV.
Yes.
Sorry, the music it started playing. I had to turn the volume down.
Gotcha.
It's somewhat distracting. But like at first I was like really excited about this because this game Final Fantasy IV has had tons and tons of ports and remakes over the years. But this was the first one where like, oh, we're gonna make it 3D. We're going to add voice acting. We're gonna have animated cutscenes.
So this is full remaster.
Yes, this is a full remake.
Or full remake, I should say.
Yeah, this isn't just a remaster because like the original was pixel based.
Yeah, the original is pixel based, and it's like at first I was really excited for it, but by the time I beat the game, I was kind of angry at it.
I was too. Yeah, I had the same experience.
So what made you angry?
Well, I guess first off, they messed with the difficulty curve in a really weird way. I mean, I could handle it. I mean, it was harder, but I could handle it. But it was also kind of really obnoxious. Like, for example, there are at least 2 different times where the in-game text, like the lore in-game, gives you clues on how to fight the bosses, right? One example is a library that says, oh, this this legendary optional boss, this legendary creature, they're going to kill whoever they're attacking unless you find a way to reflect its power back at it. That's kind of a clue, like, oh, I should be ready, use reflect, and launch it back. And then when you actually play it in this version, you try that strategy that you learned in this library, and it doesn't work. It just penetrates straight through it. Like, the lore was completely nullified, and I was ticked at that. And then there's another part where a mentor character tells you, oh, when you fight this boss, there's like 3 distinct things you could target. He says, oh, you should attack this thing first. It's the most dangerous. It has this, you should attack it first, which in the original game, you should. But in this game, if you take his advice and fight the boss, the 3-part boss in the order he tells you to, you will get wrecked. Like, absolutely wrecked.
It felt like the developers were trying to get cute with the longtime fans of the game.
Yeah, it's like if you do that, suddenly like the AI of the enemy changes to where they just are spamming this attack that hits the whole party and you just get wasted. And it's just like, and that was the case for like both of these bosses.
It's kind of like how a lot of people, when the first time they DM in D&D, they think, okay, it's me versus the players, and it's just like, no, you're not trying to beat them. You're trying to ensure that they have a good time.
Well, yeah, and like at the very like towards the end of the game, when one of the mentor characters is in your party, and he's someone that doesn't grow stronger, right? His stats are fixed, and he's a temporary character, but he's supposed to seem like this, wise, super powerful sage that has access to like every spell in the game, which is really cool. But they messed with the difficulty curve, but they didn't fix like his stats.
Yes.
That the average mob would one shot hit him. So he was like completely useless, just a dead body that you had to drag around until he left your party. And it was just, oh my goodness, it was so irritating. And then they added, now you talking about a DM who's views their players as their enemy. It reminds me in the developer room, like they made like a special developer room, that's just kind of, cookies and extras talking to the developers. One of the developers you can talk to is the new localizer translator that what he says and put in there was him making fun of the previous translator's job.
It
was mocking, it was mocking the original that, I grew up, fell in love with. And it's like, I don't know, seeing a developer of this remaster mocking one of the creators of the original version is just, it was like a slap in the face.
It's that feeling of, I'm going to take this thing that you lovingly created and everybody loves, and I'm going to make it, but I'm going to fix it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this is not your place to fix it.
Yeah,
Like-
but counterpoint, I will anyway.
Then I won't buy it.
Oh, dang it. Now you have found the one flaw in this strategy. The only flaw.
But
But
I
it's
mean,
just, yeah.
that's what it comes down to with a lot of the, like, we can go through this entire list, and there's a long list of stuff out there.
Well, not to mention, they added like some nonsensical guide dang it mechanics that they don't explain at all. Like, oh, we'll let you learn unique abilities. Like in this game, every character had a unique ability that no other character can learn. In this version, they're like, oh, we'll let you learn it. You know, some of them. But what they don't tell you is that you have to get some of the better ones to teach to your party. You have to teach some to characters that you know leave the party, and a certain amount have to be taught to characters that leave the party in order to unlock some of the better skills that you could put on your main party.
Huh, and you view this as a flaw for some reason.
Because, like, dude, if you don't have the guide, you'd never even know it's a thing. Like, I went through the game the first time, and I didn't even know it was a mechanic. Like, I only taught, like, a couple of the skills, and I'm like, this isn't that useful, because it only gave me, like, not so great ones. Wish I'd gotten this skill, only to find out, I would have had to have equipped it on someone who I know was going to leave the party.
It'd be like trying to sit there and think, you know, Magikarp is a useful Pokemon without knowing that Gyarados exists.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, now that you mention it, Baggins, like, a lot of this game, it did feel like we know a lot of people know and love this game, and we're gonna specifically mess with them and, like, ruin their expectations. Like, like, it felt antagonistic to fans of the original game.
Well, it's kind of, you know, and we don't need to get into a whole discussion about remakes and sequels and re-releases and stuff that are going on in movies right now. But, you know, there's a lot of times where there's like, okay, we're just trying to subvert expectations. Just like subverting expectations is an art, and you don't do it just to do it. And that's kind of what it felt like they were trying to do.
Yeah, so in this game, it made me mad. I will admit, I feel like in FF7 they established it early enough, even before people bought it, that you weren't upset about it. I wasn't, like, the FF7 remake, some people really hated it. I still enjoyed it, but I kind of feel like they set up the expectation way ahead of time that this is going to play very different than what you're used to, because we want to explore new things with this story, but we don't want to make just a remake that's upgraded graphics.
And so it makes it so it doesn't feel like a bait and switch. And most of the people who are getting upset are the ones who didn't see that message or that pre-prep.
Yeah.
So there was one bait and switch that I wish would have happened.
Hang on. Side note, Looney, did your microphone switch, or do you have a fan turn on or something? It's really loud.
It sounds like he's got his box fan on.
I turned on my box fan because honestly, the watching Metroid Prime, someone else playing it, actually was starting to make me car sick. So
okay,
part of the reason why I wanted to switch.
You could just minimize that.
Fair enough. Also, just so you know, you've got a you're kind of clipping a bit. So you weren't earlier, but you've started. So,
but no.
Anyway,
the whole time.
Anyway, what was the bait and switch?
So there was a bait and switch I wanted to happen. So there's a game called Banjo-Kazooie. Have you guys heard of this small indie game?
Absolutely love it.
Banjo-Kazooie, is this like a music game?
Yeah, it's a music game.
Okay.
And
Is it related to that ukulele game?
yes, it is actually. Ukulele is the
Was it like a
predecessor.
prequel, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I was being facetious.
yeah, I know.
I have neither a banjo or a kazooie.
So originally, when they first went to Rare, it had been, or when Rare first got bought out by Microsoft, one of the things they were thinking about was the fact that, okay, this is on a brand new console, and what we could do is we could do like it's because it had been about 10 years at that point since Banjo-Kazooie had come out. And they're like, we could do like a remaster of the original game now that we are on the stronger hardware. And we could do this. And then they're like, okay, but what if instead of that, we tell everyone we're doing a remaster and it looks like a remaster, but slowly but surely throughout the game, things change just a little bit until by the end of the game, it's a completely new game.
That sounds like a Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Yeah, well, but the difference there is that it's very much in tone with the tongue-in-cheek humor of that era of Rare. Mm-hmm. And it was just this idea they got, and it was sort of, I don't know, when I heard, and instead we got Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, so I might be more bitter about this than I should be. But it's just one of those interesting ideas that it's probably like that era of the internet as well is probably one of the last eras you could get away with something like that, because the internet hadn't fully taken over just yet. And so some people, cause if you're doing something like that, you are trying to surprise the player. Like that is the goal, which, you know, kind of controversial to pull the rug out from under your player, but you're trying to do it in service of comedy. So I don't know. I wish they could have had the chance, is all I'm saying.
Well, and it also comes down to fundamentally understanding the audience that you're going to get with this game. Mm-hmm. You know, so I mean, and that's with really anything. Like, you know, you couldn't remake a Pokemon game without the Poke fights, or
they did actually.
Did they?
Yeah.
Let's go Pikachu.
I know absolutely zero about Pokemons. I show up on your stream for the chill Izzy vibes.
Yep. I ran into that when I tried to play Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. I think it was the one I had. And it kind of pissed me off.
Yeah. Huh? Weird how that happens.
Do you know why they decided to do that, Lizzie?
Okay, so my best guess, Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee was the first Switch Pokemon game, and if I remember correctly, it was coming out after the big hype of Pokemon Go. Mm-hmm. And so I think a big part of it was, people are loving Pokemon Go, let's try and integrate that into this Gen 1 remake. So the Let's Go series is a remake of Pokemon Yellow, which is kind of a remake of Red and Blue / Green.
With the anime underneath it somehow.
And so the Let's Go games were, okay, we know people love Gen 1 because it's the original, so we'll do that, and we'll throw in some Pokemon Go aspects. So you don't battle wild Pokemon. There's still trainer battles, but all it is just catching the wild Pokemon, which is kind of nice and kind of not at the same time. I don't enjoy battles personally, and so it's like, I don't actually have to fight these, but then you run into the problem of I need to level up my Pokemon, and I can't battle random wild Pokemon anymore, so I have to now catch. And if you chain catching, you can get extra experience and it doesn't take too long, but then you start running out of Pokeballs to catch things with, and there's a limited amount of trainer battles you can do. So it was actually a recent thing for me. I learned how to get more money in that game is as you catch and do combos, you get these candies for your Pokemon. Not rare candies. That would have been awesome, but so you're selling like Rattata candies and things like that. And it's either that or fighting the Elite Four over and over again, which isn't always the easiest. But so the Let's Go remakes, they're fun, but also have some downsides depending on how you like to play.
They make decisions.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
No, I forgot about that. Yeah, I forgot that I did not like that.
Yeah, for the first Pokemon game on the Switch, they were trying things, and personally, if they were to make more Let's Go type games, I would still get them and play them, but at least this time I would know what I'm getting into, you know?
Yeah. Well, and that's the bigger thing, is anytime, if you're going to be switching up, it has to be out there, out front, and not a bait and switch. Now,
the thing is,
I'll
like,
give some
we knew
credit.
motion controls were a thing because they had the whole Pokeball controller being advertised, but I don't think we fully realized that there was just no wild Pokemon battles. So that could have been better communicated.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that could have been better communicated. Might as well be the motto of the Pokemon Company.
You're not wrong.
Nope.
So they did have some remakes that were spectacular, like Soul Silver and Heart Gold.
Yeah, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, they were wonderful games, and I
what were
really
good
loved...
about those?
I'm trying to remember. I've played so many now they kind of blur together, but I know another thing with a lot of remakes is they don't have the slot machines anymore because they're trying to not encourage gambling.
Boo! Encourage gambling, do crime.
I never played the original Gold and Silver, so I don't know what changed there, but they just did such a good job with Heart Gold and Soul Silver that...
Well, I will admit, the gambling they replaced with mini games, and some of those mini games were actually pretty fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, Heart Gold Soul Silver has Voltorb Flip, which I absolutely love because it's very similar to Sudoku.
It's like Sudoku and Minesweeper. Yeah, good stuff.
But I know from what I've learned, okay, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl remake, a lot of the Pokemon community hates. But it's because it's basically just a port with a slight change in the style of the game. And so it wasn't there wasn't really new stuff that got people excited. Versus Heart Gold Soul Silver, I feel like it was, you're going from Game Boy to DS. And so the graphics were beautiful in comparison. And like I said, I didn't play the original, so I don't know really what else there was. But I know everybody loved those. And the included Pokewalker was kind of a fun extra feature that was very unique for that game.
Let's encourage people to walk.
Yeah, it was a pedometer.
I literally stuck it in my sock, and this is when our oldest was a baby. And so I'm sitting there just rocking in a chair, bouncing my foot to get steps.
You see, and I just don't like that they got rid of the slot machines and they replaced it with walking. Ugh. What is this world coming to?
I mean, you have to walk, Splice.
Is that a threat?
Though that is something that is interesting. As she points out that the most faithful remake is disliked because it was too faithful of a remake in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl.
Yeah, people were excited because they loved the Sinnoh region, but then they're like, oh, it's literally just a port. And a lot of people didn't like the animation for some reason. I like the style. But the other thing is, with the shiny charm, it only affects eggs. And so people were like, oh, I don't even want a shiny hunt in this game because the shiny charm does nothing. The Grand Underground I thought was cool. I enjoy going down and mining and looking for Pokemon. But once again, like for shiny hunters, the odds there are just awful. So I think my favorite part is radar shiny hunting.
What's that?
You use the Poke Radar and you chain. You get these chains. So either you catch or kill a Pokemon, which once you get to like 40 chain, you have almost guaranteed shiny to pop up. And then, but there's always a chance it just randomly breaks. But most of my shinies have been radar chains, except for my Arceus. That was full odds, and I'm proud of that. And I still have some other shiny full odds to do in that game, because they at least did not shiny lock the legends, and I appreciate that.
So, wasn't the cave where you can go mining, wasn't that a new thing added for BDSP?
I'm not actually positive about that, because I do remember doing that before, because I did play Pearl, the original. So that I don't think was actually new, but I do think they revamped it a bit. Like you run over some Digletts in the tunnels, and when you get like 50 of them, Brutal. You've got like 1 minute of increased shiny chance in the rooms. So, and like you build a secret base, and you can put statues in there to help affect what spawns down there in the rooms.
And this sounds involved.
It can get very involved. A lot of Pokemon seems easy on the surface, but there is a lot going on in the background if you're trying to do specific things.
I can tell. Just because there's so much stuff that I see you doing, it's like, okay, but why are we doing this? And it's like, okay, so...
Yeah, anytime there's a new game out, I always have to like watch other streamers for a while, because they're the ones that figure out the shiny hunting methods, and I learn from them, and then I'm like, okay, now I can do this.
Yeah, gotta let them take the slings and arrows.
Well, and even then, sometimes we're wrong. In Let's Go, we thought it was you catch 31 of a Pokemon and then you have the increased shiny chance. And years later, we learned, no, it's only the very next spawn has the increased chance. So you have to keep catching to keep having that increased shiny spawn chance.
Jeez. This is all over the place.
And that's the thing. Each game, completely different. So you never know what to expect.
But, I mean, one could argue that's a strength on some level. Kinda.
I mean, it is nice because people have different preferences, and so everyone tends to find kind of this is my favorite method or my favorite game, and then you can enjoy the one that you enjoy.
True. I just know whenever you change things, people don't tend to like it.
Yes, but I mean, if Pokemon games were exactly the same always, it wouldn't be as fun either.
They always get that problem anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Except for Arceus. That was a fun game, Legends, Arceus.
The Legends
I enjoyed
games.
Arceus.
It's become my favorite. Absolutely my favorite.
Okay, why?
For one, you can see shinies in the overworld. It has a sparkle and a sound, so you're very likely to... I can see why that
would...
Yeah, you're very likely to not miss it. And then, because, as I've said, battling is my least favorite part of Pokemon games, you can go out there in the wild and catch things without having to, encounter battle it. You just start chucking Pokeballs at everything around you. And so I really love that. And I really
it doesn't always work, and you have to actually develop a skill to it, which is also kind of cool.
Yes, very true. And then the research tasks that you can do to increase your shiny chances. I really enjoyed doing the research tasks. It's almost like little mini achievements within the game. And I know some people didn't like it, but I put in the effort to finish every little research task that's available.
What are the research tasks? I never played this.
So for, say, Bidoof, it's catch 5 Bidoof, evolve 3 Bidoof, see it use this move, feed it food, kind of stuff.
Okay. So in theory, doing things that would...
It's basically achievements.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like mini achievements for every Pokemon in the Pokedex.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get stuff from it?
Well, you get the increased shiny chance. So when you hit, each research task is worth a certain amount of points, and when you hit level 10 with these points, it's considered a complete Pokedex entry. But if you actually finish everything, then it's a perfected Pokedex entry, and so then each of those has a different increase in your shiny chance.
Well, and that's also how you rank up instead of collecting badges.
Yes.
Which, you forget if you've been playing the game a long time and like, oh yeah, I had to level up my rank. I totally forgot about that. But yeah.
Well, the other thing I like is that it's actually got a bit more of a storyline than any of the Pokemon games I played. Like there were characters that I actually moderately connected with.
And it was cool too because they connected with like their future Sinnoh characters as well.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that part.
Because the game is set, you are transported to the past and are teaching these locals in the town why Pokemon are not as terrifying as they think and they can coexist.
And yeah, some of the characters, you see them and you immediately know, oh, this is an ancestor of someone from the other game.
Gotcha.
See, and that part I didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. Which game was Sinnoh again?
Sinnoh would be Gen 4, which is the Diamond and Pearl.
Okay.
And so we got like the Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl remake, and then almost 3 months later got Legends Arceus. And so it really felt like, hey, here, get a refresher on the Sinnoh region, and then we're going to throw you back into the past where it's called Hisui.
That's actually that actually sounds like they iterated in Pokemon.
Well, the other thing that they iterated on is there are actually boss battles that are like more of an action style game than a...
Oh, yeah, the Titan battles.
Where you're like hucking Pokeballs at the...
Those are a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're technically throwing like feed at them to calm them down.
That's what it is, yeah.
But yeah, it's these poultices, these bags that you're just chucking at them and doing damage of it, and it has a huge health bar that you're knocking down, and towards the end, like, you have to be dodging to not get destroyed.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, actually.
Well, we're getting the new one at some point vaguely in the future.
Next year. That's all we know, and I really want more info. I'm so excited.
I couldn't tell. You were so reserved about this.
All right, well, can we move on to another remake?
Yes.
This is one I don't have a ton of experience with, and it's a sort of newer one. But everything I've seen about it, I'm very, very pleased with. I've picked it up and I've played a few minutes, and I'm already kind of loving it. And that's the Riven remake. So
I don't even know what this game is.
So Riven is the sequel to Myst.
I've never played Myst, but I've heard it's good, so now I'm intrigued.
In my opinion, Riven, and most people that I've spoken to's opinion, Riven is like leaps and bounds beyond Myst. Myst was a lot more popular, I think, just because people didn't expect it. But Riven, they took all the lessons they learned in Myst and they just applied them very well. And so last month, Riven got a remaster / re-release / I don't know exactly what it is, but they've done a few things. First off, they've made it move like a platformer. I think they actually made it in Unreal, in the Unreal Engine.
Okay, well that'll help.
So I say 3D platform. I mean a first-person shooter. And so you just move around, and it feels like, because with Riven and Myst, it's basically click to move. Where you have a still scene, and then you click, and then you move to another still scene. This one, it feels like you're actually walking around inside the world of Riven. And it just makes it feel more immersive. But at the same time, it still feels like Riven. They've done what I was talking about earlier, where they are recreating the experience. And again, this is the hard thing to do with a remake, is balancing what jank to remove and what to keep. But with this, what they did is they have it so you feel like you're walking around and it feels natural. It feels good to play. But the graphics are utterly stunning. For what you're showing, we were showing on the screen, if you want to jump forward like a couple minutes just to kind of get into it. But it looks.
And when was this released?
Originally?
The original.
I think like 95.
Oh wow! So yeah, this is definitely going to be a jump.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it was 97.
Okay.
But like what they've done is, again, like the game looks like I remember it looking back then.
Imagination is wonderful.
It really is.
But I mean, like,
Sorry, just the way that was said,
like
Lizzie, it sounded
images.
like it was like a PBS special. Imagination
The
is
world
wonderful.
of imagination.
Imagination.
No, but
Like,
it is true.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And when it first came out, it was one of those games where you go into it was one of the earliest incorporations of what I feel like immersive cutscenes, where you walk and then the screen kind of like, if for example in Myst, you walked into an elevator and then you see there's a window behind the elevator and you can look out the window and kind of see stuff moving around. But when that happens, the screen kind of changes to a different feeling. There's a little blink before it happens, and so it's like looking back at it now, you're like, oh, there was a cutscene here. They switched to a video. But in this, it feels more like that actual immersive cutscene where you're just like, oh, this is just happening around me, rather than I have switched to watching a movie and now I'm back in the game.
Which is a problem. Well, not a problem, just a
and
limitation of the time.
Well, and again, back in the day, nobody blinked an eye because, oh my gosh, I'm watching a full motion cutscene.
Yeah.
But now that aspect of it has kind of become, familiar. And so...
Yeah, because I mean, we've been doing full motion cutscene video games since Half-Life.
Yeah. And so now that kind of thing, it makes it feel dated in a game that otherwise felt timeless.
Interesting. That's not something I would have considered back in, I just don't think about it in the literal sense. And
when it originally came out, it wasn't anything. There was nothing to think about.
Yeah. It was just, it was the head of its time back in the day.
Mm-hmm. But I've been very, very pleased with this just because, they've up-resed everything. Like, I think they've completely rebuilt it, but they've rebuilt it accurately.
Which that's not easy, especially in these adventure games, because it's so easy with an adventure game due to the nature of them to say, we need to fix this or that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just thinking, like, in the original, even though, like, it was made to kind of look 3D, since they had fixed cameras, it was essentially a 2D view that you always had fixed angles, and now they've recreated everything to where you can get up and move around and look behind stuff that you couldn't before. And
before it was just a series of photographs at the time, and now it's a world.
Does it still do the book thing?
Oh yes. The books are a big part of the whole Myst.
Well, it wouldn't be Myst without the books.
Yeah, that's.
Well, that'd be like sequel, saying, so I don't know.
That'd be like saying in Star Wars, do they still do that Force thing?
Dude, does Pokemon still have like animals that you capture in little red and
I don't know
balls?
Sometimes.
Red and white balls.
I was going to say red and yellow. Are you talking a repeat ball here?
Repeat balls, yes.
The books in the Myst series are like structural.
Gotcha. Yeah, I didn't play those games, so
Yeah.
Well, granted,
I think you
I
would
spent more
really
time
like
reading the books than playing the games. The books are phenomenal.
the games are fun. Like Riven, in my opinion, is one of the most brilliant games ever. It's It's really, really difficult puzzles, but they're so satisfying to solve.
I'll have to take your word for it.
What's the goal for your stream to make you play this game?
An adventure game? I don't know, man. I still. Let's put it achieve. I'll put it at the same level I put Fire Emblem.
I didn't say a million of what. I just said a
yeah.
million.
There's a reason I'm specifying. Yeah, I'd say 1,000.
Okay.
It's one of those things. It's like I don't know. I've never clicked with adventure games.
None of them?
Pun intended.
No, that wasn't. No,
I think that was just a happy accident.
That was a happy accident. But now that you bring it up, yes, absolutely.
Like just aces, like just being on point with that. Like I give that a 10 from Russia, Lizzie.
Well
That
played,
was
Lizzie.
Quality.
Very well played.
I tend to notice puns, and I couldn't let it slide without saying something.
Yeah, I wish that was intended. That would have been good. No. No,
I'm
that
kind
was
of glad it wasn't.
I wish.
See, you could have said yes, and we would have all covered for you.
Nah. I am normally the guy
wouldn't
who says claim everything. I cannot claim that one in good conscience.
Everything is content.
Very true. But yeah, no, the remaster thing is just such an interesting problem because like we've covered, it's like, what do you want changed? Because like another one that I consider really good is the DuckTales remaster.
That one was so good.
Like, so the music, they do a good job of updating the music while keeping it close, but they did change things. Heck, the final boss fight's completely different. But a lot of the boss fights are completely different.
That's true.
And
that came out around the same time as the Bionic Commando remake, and they did a lot of changes with that as well.
But if memory serves me correctly, the Bionic Commando wasn't that well received, was it?
Well, the remake, the
Yes.
rearmed remake, was very well received. It was
You're thinking of the new game that they came out with for was it PS2?
No, the PS3.
Okay.
It was meant to be kind of a sequel.
It was
A 3D sequel.
Is that Arm Girlfriend?
Yes. That one was poorly received, but the remake of the original was fantastic.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm getting my Bionic Commandos crossed.
Though it did add like kind of humor, and it did change the feeling a little bit, honestly, because it did make the story and acting a bit more over the top, but it was well done.
But Bionic Commandos always had an 80s action film feel to it, so over the top kind of works for that.
Yeah, but I don't know, before it was more serious World War II vibe, whereas...
What are you talking about? I saw you guys murder Hitler.
Well, yeah.
World War II.
Yeah,
Exactly.
any game that has you literally melting Hitler, I have a hard time taking
You
seriously.
don't melt him, you blow up his head. Totally different things.
All I know is it looked like he looked into the Ark of the Covenant. That's all I know.
His head explode.
Very
Which
much
is-
so.
Just kind of, how...
What was the
did
American
die.
name for him? Because they're like, no, it's totally not Hitler.
Master D, I believe.
That's
Master
what Master
D,
D.
And instead of... And they replaced the, symbol with the albatross. Yeah.
Which makes it look like you're fighting Albania.
Look, we all know Albania's been looking shifty the past few decades, okay?
Ever since Albuquerque came out from Weird Al, I've always been a bit leery of them.
You know, I'm actually rather surprised that you guys haven't mentioned one of the more famous recent remakes. It's one game that I didn't play the original. I haven't played the remake either, and that would be Final Fantasy VII. I mean,
we talked about that.
I did mention it. I was talking more about 4, but then I brought up how
I think it was just briefly mentioned.
It was briefly mentioned, but
well, I brought it up too.
Like, maybe I missed that. Maybe I just zoned out for a second because my hatred for Sephiroth knows no bounds.
Overrated.
And
I agree 100%.
I know.
That one.
Why we're friends.
Exactly.
Okay, choir, stop preaching to each other. All right, what's the point?
I mean, I don't know. I did like the FF7 remake, but it did have some serious issues of stuff that they changed. Namely, like the personality of some of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like Tifa and Aerith, like their personalities got scrambled in the remake, and that actually it is, you know, kind of a little bit of a problem. I mean, like to a degree, I could say, well, you know, in the original, I really liked Aerith, and I didn't really care for Tifa, but now that they've scrambled their personalities, I like Tifa more than I used to, and I like Aerith less than I used to, but I still like them both. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
and then they built Jessie up a lot more, and suddenly it's just like, well, I like her. She's a great character.
Yeah.
She has to die.
Yeah.
I mean, spoilers, but at the same time, come on. Like, I feel like whoever this Jessie character was, you knew she wasn't long for this world because there's only room for so many female leads in that game. But I'm actually more curious to ask you, what do you think about the way that they've marketed the remake as opposed to the original? Because the original, one game, bunch of discs, you're done. And then they come along and it's like, all right, here's your remake. Here's just Midgar. We're going to have another one coming out, and it's going to be, there's another area.
What are you talking about? It's one game and a bunch of discs.
Yeah, I guess, but it's one game that you're purchasing how many times?
Exactly.
At full price?
I mean, the fact that, yeah, it didn't do the whole story, but, like, to be fair, they did flesh it out and add a whole lot. Like, they made Midgar way longer than it was before.
Which is what I've heard, but I had a take on this because, again, I don't particularly like Final Fantasy VII. I view it as the Final Fantasy which started the downward trend for the franchise. But I have a lot of friends, some here, and my best friend is a big Final Fantasy VII fan. And after the bad taste that just their handling of Final Fantasy bro trip was, with the whole, not enough people bought all this, so we're just gonna cut all that promised DLC short. Like, I saw it as like holding a gun to the fans that would do anything for this remake and have for many years said, please just make this remake. We'll do anything for it. And it's like, all right, you're going to pay for this, and you're going to pay for the next one, and you're going to pay for the next one. Otherwise, you're not going to get your full story in full rendered 3D in modern generation graphics. And I don't know, like, it just, I felt like it was exploitive, but, you know, if you guys enjoy it and if you're willing to pay for the money, who am I to say what's up? But it really just struck me wrong. But, you know, Square's on my list to begin with, so that might just be me being anti-Square. I don't want to catch the Squeenix again.
It does sound like a disease.
It is. But I mean, like, obviously, you both are, you know, Lunasar and Baggins are fans. Did you ever have that impression of how they were marketing it? Or did you have that impression in the beginning and maybe it changed after you played what the game actually offered?
So I kind of missed most of the marketing on it, honestly. I just heard, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and pre-ordered it because I saw some gameplay footage, and I was like, okay, I'm interested. This seems interesting. And as I was playing, now I haven't even beaten the first one because I was playing it for a while, and then I found out, oh, the story doesn't end in this, and I was thrown, and I was just like, oh, well, wait a second. I do intend to go in and play it because what I played I enjoyed, but because I hadn't gotten that preparatory aspect that Looney was talking about, it did kind of put me off it for a bit, and so I kind of set it aside.
It's like going to a movie not knowing it's a part one and you leave unhappy. Whereas if you know it's a part one going in, you're like, okay, I can expect for it to not be fully wrapped up.
I agree with you 95% of the way.
Interesting.
You don't feel like it's going to the movie The Hobbit and then finding out it's a trilogy?
No, because I typically agree with everything that Lizzie said, but I had a very different experience when I saw Pirates of the Caribbean 2, because I did not know that was going to be split into a third one. And as we got closer and closer to the end, I remember thinking, wait a minute, there's no way we're going to finish it up in time because this has been running for a while and it feels like it should be ending soon. And a lot of people had a very different experience from me, but I remember when Barbossa comes walking down those stairs, I just was like, okay, that is a ballsy move. Because this was in my opinion, one of the earlier versions of we're going to greenlight a third movie before the release of the second one.
But this kind of goes back to what we've been talking about, though, where I normally wouldn't recommend that, doing something like that. But then at the same, talking out the other side of my mouth, I wanted them to do it with Banjo-Kazooie.
Uh-huh. Well, and that's like, I wouldn't normally recommend it, and that's why if you're going to do it, you better do it well.
I mean, I do think, I don't know, I have such extreme mixed feelings about Final Fantasy VII Remake. Because I did enjoy it. It's a fun game. The graphical update looks fantastic. A lot of the stuff they added is frankly a lot of fun. But I was prepared. I knew that it was going to end with Midgar. I knew it was a Midgar-only story going into it. I'd been prepped, which, I mean, to be fair, the first time I learned that before the game came out, I was kind of disappointed, but when I saw, like, oh, they're doing so much work, they're making the environment so much, immersive, like, everything that they're putting into it, I kind of, it tempered my expectation. I mean, for me, when I was playing it, I was enjoying it a lot, though for me, I mentioned it before, the mixing up of people's personalities and changing them, like right towards the beginning after you first get Aerith on your party after you fall into the church, and you're climbing and like a ladder breaks and she has to jump before falling, and she cusses for the first time, like, ever, because she never swore in the original game as far as I remember. That was exclusive to Barrett and Sid. It was part of their personality that those two characters are potty mouths and no one else is. Whereas now it's just like, I don't know. I mean, this is just kind of a change of the times. The whole everyone's a potty mouth all the time is a really irritating change in my opinion. But to have a character like Aerith swear, and people on the internet went crazy and loved it because, like I said, I don't know. It's
so
people on the internet can be dumb sometimes, but
they can be. So follow-up question then: do you think what you got from the new game justified the remake, or are you satisfied with it as a game as you would have been with the old game?
So
I mean, Cloud can go down a slide now, so totally worth it, right?
I'm sorry, I'm missing a joke somewhere.
So
Yep.
FF7, I've said
at a child's park you can go down the slide. The slide's in the original game, but you couldn't go down it before. So, Lizzie saw that. She's like, "Can you, the meme pet the dog?
Yeah.
Can you pet the dog?" It was basically when it's like,
can we go down the slide?
The park, she's like, can Claude go down the slide? And I went down the slide. She's like 10 out of 10. But
no, with FF7 though, the remake, this one is it really is a special case.
It is
because it's not just a remaster or even a remake of the game. It's a complete reimagining of the game. Like, it's a different play style. It's a different art style. And even story elements change. It's the kind of thing where it's just like, we're going to take this game and lean so hard into the changes that it kind of comes around the other side.
I mean, the way they set it up is it's basically like when a comic book has a franchise reboot, like this is Earth whatever 256 or whatever. This is a parallel story. This is a complete franchise reboot of the characters you love, similar story, but we're going to take so many different paths that is separate from the original story, which isn't always the worst way to go about it, because it's one thing if they take a story in a setting that you absolutely love and just undermine it and destroy it.
Yeah.
Whereas they're like, well, what you loved is still in existence, and this is going to be something different. But even that's a fine line, because a lot of DC. I mean, when I think about a lot of Marvel and DC, yeah, they technically say that, oh, this is a different parallel universe, but they still undermine it in every way possible. So,
well, and you mentioned earlier, like, they changed the personalities of Aerith and Tifa, and that didn't sit right with you, because like that's the thing is, I will read alternate versions and reboots and stuff of, say, just we'll take the most generic one possible, the original Superman. But if they make him not Clark Kent and act like he's still Clark Kent, that's when it doesn't sit well with me. And so in this, mostly because, like you said, the tweaks to Aerith and Tifa didn't sit with you, but mostly it's still Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, Barrett, Cloud 13, and all of the, or not Cloud, Red 13, and all of the other.
I was going to say,
people.
Wait, is there something I don't know?
It's better than Cloud 9. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay.
But
how much better?
4 better.
Okay.
But it just when they take that, suddenly that's when you're like, okay, you took the thing I loved, you changed it into something that it's not, and so this is no longer the thing I love anymore. And that's but like with the Final Fantasy VII remake, mostly, again, it's still the same characters, and it feels like the same characters. But like, if Aerith suddenly is the one who is, swearing up a storm, and Barrett blinks and sort of cringes back from her, afraid, you're like, okay, these aren't the characters I love. This is just, you've taken their bodies and they're a skin suit.
My hot theory is still, I think they're setting up for Tifa to be the one who dies instead of Aerith.
It's a common theory.
It's entirely possible. I don't know. I mean, I did beat the first one, and I did buy the Rebirth. I haven't played the Rebirth yet, because I actually was trying to actually go through it on hard mode, which, I mean, yeah, they changed the playstyle so much that you can replay chapters in a higher difficulty.
I intend to play them all.
I mean, I feel like what they're actually going to do is obvious. Like, Aerith heel turn. She grabs the steel chair, takes out Sephiroth, and then goes on completely out of her gourd and just path of destruction the whole way. Evil Aerith.
As much as I don't like
her climbing on the ropes and doing an elbow pile drive now.
I do have
seen a gif of that. Some fan.
Yeah, there is a picture of
yes,
Sephiroth doing the kneeling and Aerith with the chair.
The Aerith with the chair is, and I actually really like the scene of Aerith with the
chair.
That change I liked.
But again, in my opinion, like Aerith heel turn is the way to go. Like you don't kill her, you have her actually turn out to be the big bad.
See, now you're just subverting expectations to subvert them, and I already expressed how I feel about that.
I mean, I know how you feel about it, but I mean, at that point, like, if you're just gonna go full on in your own direction with a remake, like, you know, go for gusto, like, you know.
Remember the part where I said keep the characters the same and it still feel like them? This is not that.
Yeah, but they've already changed the character, as Lunasar said. So I'm just like, you know, don't halfway do it.
No,
like,
so
don't half-ass something, whole-ass it.
This actually leads to an interesting discussion that Overly Sarcastic Productions had. They talked about there's rule of cool and rule of funny. There's also a rule of tone, is what they called it, and it's the idea that there's tone armor. And that when you break that tone armor, you gain something, but you also lose something. The main example they gave, which I thought was really good, is how, for the most part, Avatar: The Last Airbender feels like a fun, heroic adventure. And then the end of season 2 happens, Ba Sing Se falls, and Aang almost dies. And suddenly, because the tone is suddenly shifted, and it no longer feels like happy fun time, and while there's still fun moments, it's suddenly a lot more serious the rest of the way through the series. And so by breaking the tone, you gain something. And so we're talking about subverting expectations and stuff, and they offer up this hypothetical, which is an amazing hypothetical. The Lord of the Rings movies are all PG-13. By the nature of it, by the nature of it, that means they're all allowed one F-bomb, according to the standards of the ratings board. And so you ask yourself, where do you put the F-bomb?
And it has become a delightful game.
Yes, it's a delight, because literally anywhere you put it in Lord of the Rings, it would becomes be wrong. But it's also hilarious.
I actually saw a video today of Dominic Monaghan and Billy Boyd playing this game.
It's a fun game, isn't it? Like
I don't know. Just
on their podcast,
I will admit that makes my blood, just thinking about an F-bomb being in the Lord of the Rings movies makes me viscerally angry.
It's
just
a hypothetical. It's not something that's actually happened.
I know, but just it's.
But the reason it's funny is because it doesn't fit whatsoever in the universe. And so you say, should we do it to get the laugh? And the answer is no, of course not, because in doing so, you lose that tone. And you suddenly don't you do lose something with it. But it is funny. And my personal favorite, there was the one when I played this game with Baggins, he suggested a bunch of Gollum's lines with him dropping F-bombs were really good. My favorite being, very well, keep your effing secrets.
That's not Gollum.
No, that was my favorite. Yeah. Keep your effing secrets. But again, it goes to the whole thing where, what do you gain when you subvert the expectation? And it's like, all right, is it worth what you lose? Because everything's trade-offs, right?
Right. Like, I feel like if you're strengthening a weakness while you're subverting those expectations, that's one thing. So, I mean, like, again, not being a Final Fantasy VII fan, I know that there were grown men who cried when Aerith died. You know, do you gain something by getting her, or finding a way later on in the narrative, as was always rumored, that you can bring her back?
The problem is figuring out and properly determining what is a weakness.
True.
And I feel like bringing Aerith back later in the game would have hurt the game.
Well,
okay.
You know, and it's funny now that I think about it, the changes that they've made to her, like mixing her personality with Aerith's, like with Tifa's, kind of swapping their personalities around a little bit, it actually would make her death less impactful, you know? Because before, she was, you know, kind of like the...
Pure like as the wood-driven snow.
Well, yeah, pure as the... Yeah, exactly. Pure as the driven snow, exactly. Whereas now she's
pure flower girl.
It's
well,
like
and the white mage.
It's like how in the like alternate versions of Earth with the Justice League, when they have Superman kill the Flash.
Yeah.
Because Barry is the heart of the team. And it just there is an impact to it.
Yeah,
or an injustice when he kills Shazam.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh,
yeah,
that was one of the most brutal death scenes I'd ever seen. like not because it was bloody, because like again,
you see
if
burn holes in the back of his cloak.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Billy Batson was kind of like the innocence of that team. You know,
he's a literal child.
And making Aerith less innocent, like her death would have less impact now in the remake, which is interesting.
I mean, it is, but do you think, you know, and it's, you know, it's difficult to say because we're all going on hypotheticals, because you'd have for the rest of the series to get
even though the next game's out. I haven't played it yet, so yeah, none of us here know.
But like, do you think that would be that's a good trade-off?
It depends on how they do it.
It really depends. It really depends. I don't know. Like I said, Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's a weird one, because usually a remake that undermines the original is usually horrible. But like, I don't know. It's like I've always said, what's the most important thing is that when you have a team working on an existing IP, the most important thing you can do is to make sure that the team loves the source material.
I agree wholeheartedly, and that's in any media.
Because, I mean, I think about movies, like, why do most video game movies, why are they terrible? Well, because they always hire actors that don't care about the original source material or actively hate it. Well, like, you're not going to get a good product when you do that.
More important than them loving it is they have to be willing to understand why others love it. One of the classic examples is Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan. The guy who directed it, he had not seen a single episode of the original Star Trek at all. So when he got hired, the first thing he did is he rented a cabin, got a projector, and went and watched the entire series so that he could understand it. And Bryan Singer wasn't a fan of X-Men when he did those films, but they became people who understood the material and what works, what doesn't, what am I sacrificing when we adapt this to live action versus the original area it was in. Because anytime you adapt, it's trade-offs.
Well, the thing is, I've seen several actors that say, like, I don't even want to look at the source material. I don't care.
You do have to be careful, though, because Bryan Singer was a fan of Superman.
Yes.
And Superman Returns is what came from that.
Yes, but the thing that's interesting about because we're talking about all these remakes and stuff, is whenever you get someone who holds on too tightly, because the problem is anytime you adapt something, even if you're adapting something from the same medium, because what Bryan Singer in that instance was a fan of wasn't the Superman comics, he was a fan of the Superman films. And so you got to ask yourself, what is the central theme of this? What is the thing that everyone has fallen in love with? And you have to make sure that the things you love are the same things that the fans love.
And again, that's why you need to, I mean, Simon Sinek has a book on it. That's why you need to start with why when you are creating this.
Well, I think we were talking about this the other day. Wasn't there someone who put out a list and like one of the first questions was like, who's your audience?
Mm-hmm. That's when we were talking about trailers.
Yeah. Who was that?
I don't remember who it was exactly.
Okay.
You know, for some reason, while you're mentioning all this and about adaptations and loving it, and that, for some reason, I'm just reminded of all of the drama around The Witcher, like in the books, the video games, and the show, and like, you know what I'm talking about, right, Baggins?
Henry Cavill's the guy to help you with that, and you ignored him.
Don't get me started. There was that, and then there was the Witcher games and the whole fight that they had with the guy who wrote the Witcher books. Like, do you know about the lawsuit and all of that happened from it?
No.
So like, I know this is off topic, but just real quick to summation it, there were the Witcher's books first, and there was a long series of books, and the writer, was very proud of them, as he is very German and Danish, and CD Projekt Red was like, hey, we would like to do games on this books. We're really fans, and we really think that this could be an immersive video game experience. And he was like,
Polish,
yeah, I guess.
Right? Yeah.
Polish, I think that's right. He's like, yeah, I guess so, but I want all my money up front. It's like, really? Because we've got this whole plan here that we want to make sure, because we're gonna do like a whole bunch of different.
He was very skeptical of the video game thing.
And he Alec McGinnis it, and he was just like, no, just give me my money up front, and because you're gonna make one game and it's gonna fail because you're not gonna do it right. And then the Witcher gaming series happened, and he just got the money up front, and he didn't get anything else. And wherever he was able to sue them because apparently there are laws that protect against that, but he didn't win because he had willfully gotten them up. But like, it was a whole long dragged out thing, because people would go up to him and like cons and like, hey, like I love your books. I got into it by playing the game. And then he would dress them down as to why they weren't really fans of his work.
Oof.
Oh yeah, and then like you get to like The Witcher the show, which Henry Cavill, who just happens to be a big old nerd, knew everything.
I cannot stand Henry Cavill. Not only is he into all the right things as far as I'm concerned, he's also like an actual Greek god. It's just some people are just too perfect, and I don't like it.
I mean, like,
crab in a bucket there a little bit.
Darn straight. I want this on the record. You're absolutely right. I'm jealous. I want this on the record.
To be fair, the other crab is absolutely jacked and could probably climb out of the bucket if he wanted.
I think the crab he's mad at has been long out of the bucket. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that he painted the bucket and it looked great.
But to roll it back, like, adaptation and source material is really key there, and like I said, it just this whole conversation reminded me of that whole situation, how just at every point it just seems like that there was drama in the background of this series.
Yeah. Well, but part of the reason why why is it always such a minefield whenever you try to adapt from one thing to the other? And part of it is, it goes to the whole thing of like, why are you choosing to use paint instead of, say, a sculpture, or instead of a story or something like that? You got to understand the medium. And video games by their nature are like, I think we fall into a lot of traps with them because we say, oh, there's a huge cinematic experience. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's mostly an interactive experience, and movies are not an interactive genre. They're
correct.
They're a 100% passive genre. And so it can be really difficult. And the same thing happens when you try to adapt to a video game. And when games do it well, one of the best examples is the Batman Arkham series, because it fully justifies why does this need to be a game instead of, say, a film. And it's because, like, if you tried to do anything like the fear toxin levels, it's just not the same watching it as opposed to being the one moving through it and getting all the interface screws. And as awesome as it is to see Batman take out a room full of bozos, it can't compete with being the one who's doing the systematic taking down of an entire room quietly and stealthily.
And getting both the feedback of success and failure.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things that they fully justified. Why does this need to be a video game? because what we have planned here literally can make you feel like Batman, and a movie can't do that.
And that's the dream.
Yep.
And I think also it is also a part that video games are, in fact, interactive art. And like with anything, art, means something. A good game sticks with you forever, and that whole experience. And when you make a remake, you're always rolling the dice that you may taint that experience, for people. Because, there are so many games that are my childhood. And I'm sure everyone sitting here tonight can say the same thing. I'm sure there are games, if somebody remade badly, it's like, all right, well, I'm just going to have to pull a Hemingway, fly across the country, and I'm just going to have to fist fight this entire studio. Sorry.
Yeah. The thing is, it's so weird. I don't know, a re-release and a remaster, in a lot of ways, I like them for the sake of, just games preservation. Like, this wasn't available, you couldn't buy it, and now it's available again on a newer system. It'll play on newer hardware, and that's wonderful. But there's always changes that can cause issues. And then remakes, as you say, where they just, completely change stuff. It's like they could destroy the thing that made the original special. Mm-hmm. But then there's an example I'm going to start playing the video now, where the remake can actually do such an amazing job that the remake replaces the original and makes the original, it improves on the original in every way possible, that you'd never ever want to go back to the original except for as a history lesson.
Well, and the one we're talking about
is Metroid Zero Mission. It completely replaces the original game of Metroid in every way possible. There is not a single thing in this game that wasn't done better than in the original. And it fixed so many problems, and it looks better, it plays better, it feels better.
So let's examine this. Why does this avoid the Star Wars Special Edition problem? Because this is the same creator going back and recreating the exact same game with better technology, and they're more mature in their development, and yet we look at the Star Wars Special Editions and we're like, oh, George, why? But this is something that we look at and we're like, oh, this is so good.
One of the things that I think that they had the benefit of in this is they essentially had Super Metroid as a test ground. Because Metroid was,
Metroid was experimental, absolutely.
But Metroid was decently received. Super Metroid was beloved. And so basically what they said is, we're going to take this game that, actually didn't do that great, and we're going to blend it. We're going to graft on a bunch of Super Metroid stuff, the stuff that worked, into it to see if we can actually create some sort of hybrid that works well. And they did it.
And they added a lot onto it as well. Mm-hmm. Like, if it weren't for the Zero Suit Samus sections and the additional boss fights that they added to it, I think that this wouldn't have been quite as well received. But
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know about that. Honestly, even without it, the extra stuff at the end, I'm like, oh, it's not over. There's more to do. Okay. Honestly, I don't think that new stuff was that big of a deal. I think just the gameplay of itself, fixing the repetitive parts of the map, fixing the way you play the movement, fixing... I don't know. I think it would have been greatly received without that extra Zero Suit stuff at the end.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Well, that's why I also said, the boss fights and stuff that they added, because it was a bit repetitive, like you said, repetitive. Adding the boss fights, I think, helped also change up the pace a bit.
Well, that's true. They did add more boss fights. The original was very light on the boss fights.
And adding a map.
One of the other problems that the Star Wars Special Edition ran into, though, also, and this was just Lucas, is he then tried to remove any other version. And
yeah,
that's not okay. People don't like that. And meanwhile, with Nintendo, I mean, you can play the original Metroid on Nintendo Switch Online right now.
It's
true.
And so I don't know. It's an interesting discussion because the theme of tonight has been sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Boy, that's risky, but holy crap, it worked out. Boy, that's risky, and why did you think it would work at all? And it goes to the very ephemeral nature of art.
A lot of it comes down to hubris.
Well, like, and even like I talk about how Zero Mission absolutely replaces the first game. The second game, it's not that simple of a story at all. Like the official remake of 2,
it was not as well received.
It's better than the original game, but in some respects, it changed things that kind of ruined it. Whereas I think the fan remake of another Metroid 2 remake, AM2R, which is the better remake of the two, I almost feel like that's the official, well, not official, but that's like the best version that could potentially replace the Game Boy version. But the official one, I don't think does.
Right.
Even though, not to say it was a bad game, it wasn't.
It's definitely an improvement. It's just it's got to compete with an already superior version that's out there.
Well, there's the competition, but it also does suffer from the George Lucas syndrome,
the special edition.
Yeah, the special edition where they're like, oh well,
let's throw a Ridley fight at the end of this, even though it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, let's throw a Ridley fight, even though it doesn't make sense.
Ruins the tone.
Instead of having the deepest part of the planet be this desecrated husk that the Metroids have systematically, strip mined, let's make it this Chozo lab that has awesome music but kind of ruins the whole story of depicting how dangerous the Metroids truly are.
It is awesome music though.
Oh gosh, I love that song. It's like, I hate what you did to this area, but the music's fantastic.
But I'm absolutely bopping to it.
But yeah, it I don't know. It is the Star Wars special version where they, I'm not going to make Han shoot first anymore for some weird reason. So yeah, I don't know. It is weird of why is it that Metroid 1's remake has nothing to criticize about it, but other things it's so easy to find things to criticize.
Again, just that ephemeral thing in art, and there's you can have all the aphorisms in the world, and sometimes they're true, sometimes they're not, and there's just really nothing you can do other than try and learn. But the more you try and learn, the more you're going to find the rules are there to be broken, and sometimes they're there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, all right, we've been going at this for a while. Let's do our roll calls. Lizzie, would you like to promote something?
I will promote my stream, twitch.tv/LizziePetrichor. I stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays doing Pokemon shiny hunting.
What are you on right now?
I am back to looking for Galarian Farfetch'd since it is the month of Lunsar's birthday, and Farfetch'd is one of his favorites.
What? Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I would not have had that for you, Looney.
I'm over, I think, 3 times over odd on eggs at the moment, so that's fun.
What's over odd?
So there's an odds of Masuda hunting. It's 1 in 512, and I'm over Actually, maybe I'm not 3 times over. I'm 2 times over because I'm over 1,200 and eggs at the moment.
All right. Lunisar, would you like to promote Farfetch'd?
Yes, especially as she's doing it in honor of, July being my birthday. I will promote Lizzie's stream and hunting Farfetch'd. And you're probably wondering, why I like Farfetch'd.
I am.
It's a duck in a leak. What's not to love?
Well, it's
I don't know.
I mean,
Lunisar just struck me as like a Growlithe type.
I'm actually surprised. I'm not really a Growlithe person, but in the case of Farfetch'd, it's because it was one of the Pokemon that came with False Swipe, which is just one of the best moves for catching a Pokemon, because you could get a Pokemon down to 1 HP without worrying about accidentally killing it. So Farfetch'd was my go-to for I want a Pokemon to not kill with so I can catch stuff. And then in Sword and Shield, they changed it to the Galarian form and made it a fighting type that when it has a leak equipped gets guaranteed criticals. So it's actually pretty awesome, and it evolves into Surfetch'd, where it's like a sword and shield that it has, a plant sword and a plant shield. It's actually pretty decent Pokemon, so that's why I like it.
All right. Baggins, would you like to promote anything?
The Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. If you like Brandon Sanderson or his Cosmere novels, you should definitely come check us out. We are coming up, continuing our Stormlight Archive reread at the moment as we prepare for the end to the first arc of the Stormlight Archive. This has been a long time coming, and
Kamizite needs to freaking start reading the Stormlight Archive.
Yes, he does.
I've seen all 3. I've read all 3 of them. That's all that was ever written.
Oh my goodness,
This man, so frustrating. Kamizite, do you want to promote anything?
Yes, beef. It's what's for dinner.
Oh, okay. Well, he's in the.
You're in the pocket of the American Beef Council.
Yeah, dude, I'm all for promoting beef and farming. Good stuff.
Also, smoked cream cheese.
Pretty good.
Yes.
All right. And then you can find me twitch.tv/splicestream. We are hopefully this week going to be starting up our new game show, The Quizzard. I am so proud of this name. And it's just video game trivia, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's so bad.
Indeed.
So bad it's good.
All right.
Sure.
Guys, I think we overleveled.